Welcome back to another episode of Multifamily AP 360. And today's our guest is DJ McClure from National Flood Experts. Welcome, DJ.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you very much. And little bit about DJ is the VP of Sales and Business Development at National Flood Experts, driving strategic growth through partnerships and tailored cost-saving solutions. NFE's achievements include consecutive appearances on the INC 5000 list and recognition on the Tampa Bay Business Journal's Fast 50 list. With a commitment to innovative flood insurance solutions, NFE has saved clients over 15 million in premiums and added nearly 300 million in property value. Supported by a team of experienced professionals, NFE is dedicated to provide nationwide clients with education, guidance, and optimal solutions. With that, DJ, you want to add anything to background?
Yeah, we're glad to be on the show, and education is really the big thing that we're always pushing. There's so many different solutions that exist within the flood world. And so our company is really proud to be one of the few that have found a way to tackle this problem, both with the flood zones and helping reduce the flood insurance premiums. The cost savings are really worth their weight in gold these days.
Yeah, got it. Thank you very much. So share me a little bit more about your background. How did you get into this space?
Yeah, I had a background in the tennis industry for about 10 years, which was a unique grooming into the business world, helping run tennis clubs, be a professional tennis coach. So I say that tennis was my sales training in my early days, but I always had an interest in real estate and enjoy the task of solving a problem. So when I met this company, gosh, it was 2018, going on quite a few years now. And I was just really interested in the niche that this company had created that really overlapped real estate, insurance, and engineering all into one collaborative field. And we've just really become a market leader and consultant in helping to add a really unique value add solution to these real estate investors.
Yeah, thank you very much. So any skills from tennis industry you're bringing translated into this real estate space?
Absolutely. So with tennis, you meet somebody, you've got to build rapport quickly, you've got to find common ground, build trust, which is what you're doing anytime you meet anyone, especially within real estate. And so being able to find ways to communicate well, help really genuinely solve a problem, I think those are skills that they're tough to learn. And it's something that I think's really helped me in building relationships and really being able to connect well with our clients and with business partners around the country.
Awesome. So who is your favorite tennis player?
I've always been a Roger Federer tennis fan. It's really sad that he retired, but that's just the circle of life, really. So I'm in this limbo phase right now, trying to figure out who my new favorite young player is. To be determined still.
Yeah, he is one of the greatest player. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, coming back to our topic, like flood zone stuff, how to uncover the hidden envoy for commercial real estate in flood zones. So I guess you're talking about single families or commercial different asset classes, right? So
That's right. Yeah, we really work on all commercial. We do a lot of multifamily. There are probably 50% of our projects every year. And almost all the projects that I personally work on are multifamily. So insurance in general is something that you don't typically look at as a value add option within your different strategies. Flood insurance is fairly unique because it has some attributes that are different than other types of insurance. And so all other insurance lines are private, whereas flood insurance, for the most part, people are getting their flood policies through FEMA. FEMA has a standard rule book, if you will, on how they rate the policies. And so our company's been able to find ways to break down and improve the rating of those policies. And so this is all from the engineering foundation. And so when we work with the carriers to go in and improve the rating of those policies, basically say, look, there's information that you hadn't considered for these buildings. And when we're able to do that, it immediately lowers the flood premium. And it's not just for that 1 year. The best part is that you then see an automatic year-over-year impact. And so that's what I mean when I say that we've overlapped these different expertises, because traditionally engineering's over here, insurances over here, they don't really relate to one another. And so our company was founded by our president, Brad Hubbard. He's our original engineer. He actually also worked in the insurance world for a number of years. And he realized there was this overlap that wasn't really being given enough attention. And that's where our company was founded. So the hidden NOI is that you got to really look at your flood insurance, because not only is there an opportunity to potentially reduce that premium, but there's also the second part of this, which is the flood zones. And so when you're in a flood zone, your lender is going to require flood insurance. What if that property could be taken out of the flood zone? And so one of the other big things that we're doing is we work with FEMA to get the flood maps improved and corrected and actually get buildings taken out of the flood zones. And that removes the lender requirements. So either of these two scenarios can be sometimes north of 100,000 in annual cost savings, which is huge.
Yeah, got it. Thank you very much. Couple of follow-up questions. So now a property is in flood zone, how exactly we can remove from the flood zone?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the flood maps, they really include on a mass scale within a large area properties and buildings. And so what we're doing is more of a micro analysis at kind of a building by building level. And then we're taking that engineering detail to FEMA to say, hey, look, actually these 5 buildings or these 10 buildings have these engineering characteristics to where they can be excluded from the current 100-year flood map. And then FEMA reviews the engineering. Once they approve the process, then a federal letter of map amendment is issued. Those buildings are now considered to be part of the X zone. And what that means is that now all your federal lending programs, which is 95% or more, they no longer have a requirement to pass on for the flood insurance cost.
Got it. Thank you very much. Can you elaborate a little bit more about engineering characteristics on that?
Sure. It has a lot to do with calculating the most accurate flood elevation for those buildings. So the flood map will have a flood elevation within that area. And in a lot of different parts of the country, you can actually drill it down to the 10th of a foot for what it is for that particular building. You might go maybe 3 or 4 buildings to the east on a property to the south, flood elevation could change by ½ foot. And so it's getting to those really small details. And there's also some different elevation characteristics of the buildings that are taken into account also. And so you're putting those 2 pieces of data together for us to be able to make a claim and prove to FEMA that those buildings can then be reclassified.
Got it. Thank you. So what are some extreme scenarios where we cannot remove flood zone from that flood zone?
Where it can't be removed, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's situations where properties are just sitting within a bowl compared to the topography surrounding. So not everything can be taken out of the flood zone, but that's where there's a 2-part analysis here. If something can't be removed from the flood zone, then you really start looking at the flood policy to see are the most optimal characteristics of the building being taken into account for the flood policy. And FEMA changed their flood insurance rating system about 3 years ago. And so they have a whole set of new variables they're using. And we're still finding pretty consistently that there are variables that are not being taken into account as optimally as they can be. And so a lot of what we're doing is an extensive audit. And for some of those properties, you can help with the flood zone. For some of these other properties, you can help with getting the flood policy cost reduced. And then there's some properties that we just can't help. We've got about a 50% success rate on identifying a solution. We look at hundreds of properties every month. 50% is a pretty good percentage.
Got it. Got it. Thank you very much. So investors can reach out to you guys directly, or they can reach out through insurance companies. What is the process?
Yeah, it could be either one. We partner with a lot of different insurance brokers around the country. I like to think we know a lot. We don't know everyone. So definitely we get a lot of clients that reach out to us directly. You can send an email to info@nationalfloodexperts.com and someone on the team will respond and ask for the certain different documents that we need to do our review. We do this audit at no cost on the front end. I encourage everyone, if you've got a property in a flood zone, you've got our engineering resources literally at your fingertips to be able to have our team really dig in and see if there's anything that's possible.
Got it. Thank you. So what are some acquisition or underwriting strategies to incorporate for properties in flood zones?
That's one of the things that you want to look at in the very beginning. You want to add this to your checklist, one of many other things that you're looking at in the early stages of an acquisition, because we see that this gets overlooked quite a bit, or somebody receives bad information. We have cases where the broker is unaware, or a neighboring property, or the seller, someone just has the idea that the property is not in a flood zone. And so then you go through the buying process thinking, okay, I'm not going to have a flood insurance requirement here. And you don't take that cost into account for your underwriting. And we get phone calls 2 and 3 weeks before closing all the time, where someone's, oh my gosh, the lender just told me I had to buy flood insurance. So you'd rather identify this from stage one before you've even submitted the LOI. You can do simply by just putting the address into FEMA's flood map. You can go and just Google MSC FEMA map, and it'll pull up FEMA's flood map. And so identifying this from the beginning, now could maybe say, okay, I want to talk to national flood experts and have them take a look. There's a lot of times we can identify and get a solution completed all prior to the acquisition closing.
Got it. So now, as a new investor, when they are purchasing like these properties, how exactly they know like how to identify whether this property is in flood zone or not?
Yeah, so the flood maps actually, they color code really well. If you can go to the flood map, you put in the address, the flood zone's blue. So if any of that blue area, which is the 100-year, any of that touches even a small corner of a building, then it's going to get flagged by a lender for flood insurance. So that's something you can do if you're a new investor and you're just really unsure. Just send us an email. I do this for people all the time. I always have the flood map pulled up on my computer pretty much all day. So we look at properties and we help really give like that initial 30,000 foot view of, hey, Mr. Investor, I can see that there's 4 buildings in the flood zone here. I can see that there have been some properties nearby we've been able to remove. There's probably something worth going a little deeper here. But sometimes that's all the basic information that you need in the beginning. You're trying to factor all these different things into a decision of whether or not to make an offer. And this is just one of those variables to know.
Yeah, thank you. So there are 2 other partners like insurance and also lender requirements, right? So how to understanding lender flood insurance requirements, how to maximize your refinance value or purchase value.
Yeah, so now everybody realizes that the different lending programs have certain specific flood insurance requirements. So like more standard type loans, they're going to require typically just the maximum per building that NFIP, the National Flood Insurance Program, will offer, which is like $500,000 in coverage per building, right? So if that's what you had in place when you bought something, that's going to stay in place until maybe you go in and refinance into an agency type debt, like a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac program. Those programs have much higher coverage requirements. You have to now increase the limits to the full replacement value of each building. You also have to ensure 12 months of business income. And so this can now take that from 500,000 a building to as much as $1 million plus per building. And now you increase that coverage limit. You add in the business interruption piece that you have to add, and now your flood insurance cost could double or triple from what it was initially. And not everybody realizes this when they go into the refinance. Again, I say that anybody that's listening that has a flood insurance requirement, you want to have our team take a look as soon as possible, because the sooner you can get these solutions identified, the sooner you can get these to the finish line. And this could change the strategy for what your next couple of years of the property may look like. You may be in a difficult situation in trying to get the numbers to pencil in the refinance, right? I'm sure you're hearing about tons of people that they can't even fill, there's a gap there. If they're having to now pay more in to even get the refinance to go through, capital calls, all those things. We had a case last week where we added $2 million in property value. And maybe that 2 million is the difference between the refinance numbers actually working out or not. Some of these can be pretty impactful.
Yeah, thank you very much. Would you elaborate a little bit more about how exactly you guys are adding more value or more increasing value of NY through your program? Maybe take some case study.
Yeah, the best part about this type of solution versus some of your traditional value add strategies is that any of these cost savings, they go immediately to the bottom line, right? There's no costs coming out of this. And so if you're saving, let's say 30,000 a year, now it's a year over year savings because like I was saying, all of these solutions, they're immediately, you're going to see second year, third year, fourth year savings. And so that 30,000, on an average cap rate, that's 500,000 or more in valuation. And for anyone that's not familiar with how we calculate that, we're taking 30,000 over an average 6% cap rate, and that's where you get that 500,000. And obviously cap rates are a lot lower than that on some properties now. It's even a greater valuation impact. But for some of these properties we're working on, like we had one last month, they had $137,000 annual flood premium. We were able to take that down to about 7,000. So what does that 130,000 equate to? That's more than 2 million in instant valuation, meaning if they go into a refinance, they've got an extra 2 million that's being taken into account on the property valuation. And so that's one of the more larger situations we've had recently. We had a case down in Fort Myers, which if you're familiar, they've been hit with a lot of storms in the last few years. So this was a case where we couldn't change the flood zone, like the prior example I was talking about, but we were able to reduce their flood premium by 50,000. So they went from 250,000 a year, which is a crazy high premium, down to 200, which is still obviously a high number, but that 50,000 has a dramatic impact. So that's nearly $1 million in valuation that property has now seen as a result of just one project.
Awesome. That's a great story. So what factors would influence to reduce the flood insurance or premium, insurance premium?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different data points that are aggregated from the carrier side. Some of it's data that FEMA is pulling in that they have access to, and there's some assumptions that are being made. And so at the end of the day, it's a very extensive audit that our team's doing. They're basically deconstructing the flood policy. We're breaking it down to 20 plus variables. And then we're doing a data check on every single one of those variables. And a lot of times with these types of solutions, it's a combination of factors that we're able to go in and say, actually, this is the correct data point for this detail related to, maybe it's an elevation point, maybe it's a demographic detail. We've seen cases where the latitude and longitude of the building was incorrect. So they were even considering the wrong building. So it's a real extensive audit and combination of things that we're finding. And then what we're doing is putting together the engineering exhibits to the carrier and say, actually, this is what these data and variables should be. And please go in and re-rate the policy. And so for flood insurance specifically, FEMA actually tells you what your ceiling price is going to be. If you're paying $5,000 today, and it tells you that your full risk premium is going to be $10,000, where you're going to increase every year until you get to 10,000. Well, what if something in the rating is not as optimal as it could be? And if we go in and correct that, we have cases where we can actually bring down the ceiling price. And so what that means is that, let's say, instead of being 10,000, we brought down their ceiling price to 4,000. So now they went from 5,000 to 4. They get a refund back from the carrier. And now every year going forward, they're going to be paying 4,000. So now they're not seeing increases anymore. And now from a forecasting standpoint, you can know every year that your flood insurance is going to be at that same price. And so for businesses, right, forecastable expenses are huge. So this is where like this unique type audit, can be really beneficial.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Would you also share any challenging experience where you're unable to execute your cost saving strategy?
Sure. I mean, we look at properties every day, from California to the East Coast down to Florida. And there's just some properties that, the data is what it is. The flood zone, maybe it's an old property and the flood zone worsened over time, which can happen. Properties all the time, they're built in the 60s and 70s before there were even flood maps. Most of the flood maps came around somewhere between 75 and 85 around the country. You could have built a property back in 1970, and now all these years later, they've actually deemed that the flood risk is maybe worse than what they had known back in the day. So that property may be not elevated to a point to where we can even make a case. Sometimes it's the same for the flood policies, right? So we actually see cases where properties are getting a better benefit of the doubt based on some of those different assumption data points. And so we say, hey, Mr. Client, we can't make this any better than what it is. Unfortunately, the flood insurance requirement is going to stay in place. So we get to give good news a lot, but sometimes we have to give bad news too. But that's the beauty of that front-end review that we do. There's no cost, even if we have to give some bad news. There wasn't an expense tied to that in most cases.
Yeah, got it. So when is the good time to reach out, you guys?
It's like the saying in real estate, right? The best time to buy real estate was yesterday. It's the same for any property in a flood zone. It doesn't matter where you are in the life cycle. You just bought it and you've owned it for 10 years. I'd say reach out to our team as soon as possible because you just never know. And I really say that because over the years, there's been so many different situations where at the surface, I see it and I'm like, gosh, I just don't know that we can help here. And then our engineers find something. So I really broadened and opened my mind to everything. Doesn't matter if it's flooded during Harvey in Houston or when it was built or if it's sitting right on the beach, like literally everything is worth our team taking a look.
Got it. So which state and which city where you will get more number of these kind of requests?
Oh gosh, it's a good question. People always ask me that because they want to know where to go buy deals. And we find solutions literally everywhere. So I wouldn't say there's any one market where it's more likely than another, but we've done a ton of projects like in Houston, New Orleans, like markets you may not expect there to be these kinds of solutions, but Boise, Idaho, Northern and Southern California, up into Oregon, up into the New York, New Jersey area, like we really do find success everywhere. So regardless of where someone's footprint that they're looking to acquire properties, there could be something there. And that's what's interesting about when you start looking at this during the acquisition process and when you're in the early underwriting, is that we have cases where people will bring us a deal, we'll find a solution, and in getting that solution executed prior to closing, we've had clients literally day one of ownership have an extra $500,000 or extra $1 million in property value from day one. And the seller obviously didn't know this was possible because they didn't think to evaluate this before selling it. That's where some of this bonus NOI, bonus valuation can come in on certain deals.
Got it. Thank you very much. So what's your company's plan or strategy for next 2 to 5 years?
We're continuing to find more ways to help. That's really always our goal. We're starting to think, what other types of services can we also bring value to? And so one of those areas is on, some of the property insurance side. So we're trying to really work with some of our long-term clients to really see what can we do to help potentially also bring down the property insurance, because if we can find a way to really crack that, obviously there's a huge market out there of people that would love to find ways to lower that cost too. So still in the early stages, but we're optimistic that there could be some opportunity there too.
Got it. Thank you and good luck with that. So any personal habits that are helping you to be successful?
I go to the gym every morning. I think maybe that's cliche in a way, but there's a place I like here. They have a class at 6 a.m. every day, and I try to be there at least 4 days a week. For me, it gets me out of the bed, gets me awake, gets some good blood flowing. I can't encourage that enough. Even though I know not everybody loves exercise, whether it's walking or riding a bike, I think there's equal benefits all around.
Got it. So share me any one personal learning that has played major role or major impact on your, personal life or business life.
I wish I had been told this at a younger age. I think I was maybe a little older than you're the average of the 5 people around you. And I look back at some of the success I had as like a junior tennis player and similar in college. And I credit that a lot to the people that I had around me. And I think your environment really drives you or it can pull you down. And I'm a real estate investor like yourself on the LP side, and I think so. Surrounding myself with people that are constantly wanting to grow, constantly wanting to improve, whether it's sales or business, whatever it is, I think there's a lot of truth in that statement.
Got it. Yeah, yeah, so powerful. Thank you. So, any books impacted your life?
The Compound Effect. If you've never read that, it's a great book. It's a short read, and it just really talks about how that 1% better every day. You don't see it on a small scale, but when you take something over a month, 6 months, 12 months, or longer, the compound effect proves to be true more times than not.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how can listeners can connect with you, DJ?
Yeah, my email is dj@National Flood Experts. You're welcome to reach out anytime. And then you can also, if you've ever got properties that you'd like to have a look at, you could also reach out to our info@National Flood Experts and be glad to take a look at any property and see if we can help.
Awesome. And thank you very much, DJ. Thank you for sharing strategies to reduce costs and also increasing net operating income. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks so much.